Welcome, thank you. Welcome to the RISD Footwear Affinity event featuring Allison Spahr. Please note that this event will be recorded and posted online by RISD and may also be posted by any external parties involved. So please turn off your video if you do not wish to have your image shown. And we are thinking that we will turn off the recording after the presentation so that we can talk freely amongst ourselves. So go ahead, Allison. I'll let you introduce yourself. On the Zoom tonight is me, Sarah Guerin, and Daphne Board. We're the founders of Footwear RISD Affinity Group. And I am a Western boot maker in Wakefield, Massachusetts. I was a 1999 architecture grad. And Daphne, you could say who you are.
Daphne Board. I'm a shoemaker out in Western Massachusetts. And I was a RISD 1998 grad in textiles.
Take it away, Allison.
Hi, everybody. My name's Allison Spahr, and I graduated a really long time ago in 1986 and studied textiles. And my career has taken a lot of twists and turns. And so tonight I've put a bunch of slides together just to show you sort of where I started and where I ended up. And having the background at RISD really gave me the opportunity to be able to pivot and do a lot of different things in my career. And so I'll just start scrolling through some of the things that I've done. So after I graduated, I went straight to New York City because I felt like that's what I needed to do. I got to go to New York. I got to make a name for myself, do all of these big design things. And there's a picture of me at my desk. I was on the 29th floor of a high-rise building working for Burlington Industries. And I was doing service design and really targeting middle market. Kmart, JCPenney's were some of the largest customers. And so you can see they were lots of florals. This was back in the day when there was no computers. So I painted everything by hand. And these are some of my paintings that ended up going into production and getting printed for apparel. So all the surface designs were geared for apparel. I had a couple other jobs. I didn't put all my jobs in on tonight. After I left New York, I moved up to Boston. I'm originally from New Hampshire. And so I think, the little New Hampshire girl needed to go to New York City and figure out what was going on in the design world. And then I slowly started making my way backwards. Back towards New Hampshire. And so I took a job with a company called Susan Bristol, and they were in the Schraff building years ago, and they were a apparel company, and they were making these little matchy-matchy sweaters and printed apparel to go with their sweaters. And so I was hired as their service designer. And so I was still doing a lot of florals, painting by hand. The picture on the right is my claim to fame. I made it on the cover of Women's Wear Daily. That's one of the prints that I did for Susan Bristol. And it was taken from an antique swatch. We used to do a lot of antique shopping, and we would take a lot of the old designs and render them and recolor them. And that was one of the designs that made it on the cover. After I left Susan Bristol, I went to work as a textile design manager for Victoria's Secret. And so I was running a department that did all of the printed surface designs for all their pajamas and their lingerie. So it was still in the apparel business, still surface design. And this was one of the first computer generated pieces of artwork that I did on the right-hand side. And not growing up and not using computers when I was at RISD, they were pretty crude, the first programs that came out, but they were able to get done what we needed to get done. And so it was a big learning curve on the job. After I left Susan Bristol, I got hired at Malden Mills, which is in Lawrence, Massachusetts, or was in Lawrence, Massachusetts. And I remember going to my interview and the building looked like this that I pulled up to, and I thought, I don't know, this doesn't look like, it looks like an abandoned building. But what it was inside was like a treasure of textile manufacturing. And it was still running in New England. And once you got inside, it was like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. I ended up spending 24 years there. And I had a really amazing career there. I started out as a textile designer, and back in the day when they were making printed flock, and it was for furniture, import, export. We sold 200,000 yards of printed flock a week, which is a lot of flock. What happened was, then I also was working on material development, and this was a knitted Rochelle material. So I did some work with Bob Timberlake. I did some work with Harrods. We always had some really cool customers that were looking to do different things. So I started branching out, doing some woven design, knitted design. So having my textile background at RISD, where they forced me to weave, even though I really felt like I wanted to be a surface designer. They wanted me to keep weaving because they felt I had some talent in the weaving, and it ended up paying off in some of the jobs that I've had. I did a lot of material development for different types of furniture companies. Pottery Barn was one. This was a slip cover that we came up with a material that you could cover, and it was made out of the polar fleece material. It was the first time they had made something that didn't stretch like the apparel fabric. So it was pretty cool. And then in 1995, I don't know if you guys all know about, there was a fire that destroyed these mill buildings, and there were 3 major buildings that went up in flames in December, and it was so cold. The water just from the firemen trying to put the fire out just froze, and they couldn't even do anything. So they just stood and watched the buildings burn practically. And so my office and the whole design studio was in one of those buildings. And so we lost everything that night. And we had put, back in the day, we had put all of our designs, we would back them up to an optical disc every night and put them in a firebox. And the fire was so strong that the box actually melted. And so we had no history of any of our artwork or any of the designs for years. So what happened was we ended up having the opportunity to bid out all new software, and we had the latest, greatest brought in, and they ended up building a state-of-the-art textile facility. And it was quite remarkable what they were able to do, keep things running. They kept all the design staff on, paid us to stay and work. We had temporary offices set up. So it was a pretty historic moment. Once we got everything up and running, this building is still there, but they've since shut down and moved out in the last few years. So through Polartec, we did a lot of textile pattern design. After the fire, we switched from doing upholstery furniture to apparel designs, because the polar fleece was making a lot more money than the furniture fabric. So we did a lot of printed fleece. You'll probably still see some of these things walking around on kids because this material is indestructible. So Patagonia, of course, was one of the founding customers that created the chinchilla fleece at Patagonia, and we did all the kids' prints for them. LL Bean was a big customer, so we were always doing the design work for them. Athleta, Acorn. So this just gives you an idea of some of the design work that was created for fleece performance fabrics. While I was there, I also was in charge of all the color development. So I was able to come up with the color palettes, the color stories, naming everything. I also love to take photographs. And so I worked really closely with the marketing department, and I was always taking the pictures for the color cards and a lot of the marketing materials, marketing collateral. I did all the photography work for these type of things that would get shipped out to customers. Then we were always trying to do innovative, different business developments. And so we worked with Sealy, and we were coming up with a mattress ticking fabric that would wick the moisture away and keep you cool while you were sleeping. So we were trying to take all the attributes that the performance apparel fabrics and turn them into furniture fabrics. So Sealy was one, and there's a, the beds up at the top are how the end product came out, and it had a very modern contemporary look to it. Then I also did some contract furniture fabric, and that got shown at NeoCon. So that was the first time that they had done any material development for the contract furniture business. And then after that, we ended up getting Stinson, who's a major player in the contract furniture world, to do a collab with us. This was sort of before people even knew what the word collab meant. And so we created this collection called Fit by Polartec. And so I worked with all the engineers to come up with the knitted structures of the materials, the color stories, and the marketing collateral. And then Tanya Nyack, who is a HGTV Restaurant Impossible, she approached us and wanted to do a restaurant with us. And we created all the fabric for the restaurant where they would come in, and I don't know if you guys have seen this show, that they come in and they turn the restaurant around in 24 hours. And she's a pretty fantastic interior designer, decorator. It's pretty impossible what they get done in 24 hours. So that was really fun. Then we've done some projects with Knoll, where we were creating a new fabric that was going to go on the back of the chairs, and then the surround systems. It's funny, when I was putting these slides together, I was thinking about how many years ago this was done, and the surrounding systems are really COVID friendly now, and people are building a lot of items like that these days just to protect different areas of the office spaces as people come back. So I started as a designer there. I got promoted to a director of design. And then when I finished my career there, I was the vice president of global design. And that wrapped up 24-year career there. I did a lot of really fun things, traveled all over the world, but decided it was time to do something different. And so I got hired by this little startup in Portsmouth, New Hampshire called CoolCore. And I was hired as their vice president of innovation and product development. And they were making chemical-free cooling fabrics. And so it was sort of right up my alley with the apparel, knitted structures. And they had a really great technology with their yarn construction. And a lot of people were applying techniques with chemicals to make the materials cool. And CoolCore had a proprietary construction that surpassed all of the items that have chemicals on them. And so their materials were really great for performance wise.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
Do you mean the CoolCore fabrics it was just structural in the way that the fabric was knit, that's what was cooling as opposed to any kind of chemical applied?
Yeah, it's a combination of the knit or the yarn cross section and the knit construction. And I can't tell you all the secrets or I'll get in trouble. But what was really fun was, here's some pictures of some mills over in Asia. So I worked a lot over in Asia, in the Shanghai area at some textile mills. And that's one of the things that I'm really grateful for my career is I love to make things and I love to see how things are made. And being able to get in these factories, it's fascinating seeing how a piece of fabric is made and just the all the work that goes into setting up a creel and a knitting machine. It's hours and hours and hours. So after I left Cool Core, I went to Timberland, and they hired me as their director of material development. So when I was interviewing, the position was for running the material development for footwear. And I had never been doing much in footwear. I had done some materials throughout my career, but nothing major. And I said to my boss, I don't know anything about leather. I don't know anything about compounds. And she said, don't worry, you have a team of people, you have the management skills, you'll be able to learn and keep everything running. And so it was really interesting late in my career, all that I had to learn. But I think it was what was really challenging and interesting for me. So one of the first things that I did, I had the opportunity to go on a sustainable raw materials tour in South Africa. And it was organized by this company called Organimark, and they are based in South Africa. And so for 2 weeks, there was a group of about 12 of us from all over the world that were selected as sustainable material suppliers. And we traveled to all of the sustainable material manufacturers in South Africa. And we did everything from regenerative leather tours. We went and saw the mohair trading houses. We did some cotton spinning. It was 2 weeks of fascinating. I had never been to South Africa before, and it was really a highlight of my career. So this picture is a picture of my life at Timberland. So my responsibility at Timberland was putting a toolkit together for the design team and the product developers to use. And so this just shows you in spring 20, the amount of materials that got put together, and color stories were put at the top, the themes were put together, and this was in the materials library. And each material, each leather had to have a standard setup and a color code assigned to it before the design team could even think about using it. And so the materials team was responsible for getting the entire toolkit put together, which was a really big undertaking. And you can just see the vastness of how many materials go into making footwear. And this is just really the upper of the footwear material. This doesn't even include the laces and the trims and the insoles and the outsoles.
Is that a separate team?
No, that was all part of my team. I've got some other pictures that show you. So everybody knows the Timberland yellow boot. I didn't realize how many parts went into making a boot until I got into a boot factory. And you can see over on the left, all the leather pieces that are cut and hanging and moving through the conveyor belt in the factory. And then the uppers are on the right-hand side before they're attached to the outsole. Timberland really focused a lot on sustainable materials. So that was a really great thing for me to work on. One of the projects that we spearheaded was starting to work with Haiti and have them grow cotton for the first time in 3 decades. And it's really, it's unfortunate they just had another earthquake, but it's just a poor country. And so Timberland started this program where they were growing trees to help the farmers down there. And it's turned into, well, let's see if we can get them to start growing cotton again, because the conditions are perfect and they really need a crop that they can actually sell and make some money from. And so I started this whole program where we got the first harvest done, and I flew down for the first harvest. And this is the picking of the first cotton harvest. And I think, I haven't checked lately, but I think the shoes are going to be coming to market this year, where they actually, we took the cotton, we imported it into the United States, we had material made, and then the shoes were made from the material from the Haiti cotton. It was really fun being down there, because these kids, they had never even seen a computer before. They had never even seen what they look like, because they don't have mirrors and they don't have cell phones. And they were just so interested in everything that I was doing and working on. And look at their eyes, they're just adorable. One of the other things I worked on, because my team handled all the materials going into footwear, was the sustainable materials, natural rubber, tencel, cork. On the left is an actual rubber tree. I was in Vietnam at some rubber plantations, and it's fascinating how they have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, tap the tree, and it just slowly drips into those little buckets or little dishes, and they empty it and collect it, and that's how they get the natural rubber. I did a lot of work with different compounds, conventional rubber, EVA, recycled rubber. The True Cloud is a new footbed that I developed while I was there. And then there's a sugarcane. No, I'll go back. Sorry. We also worked on regenerative ranching. So that was the first time that Timberland had done anything with the regenerative leather, and that we sourced from farms where their cattle are grazing so that they are not destroying the land. And it's kind of like a grass-fed, it's a grass-fed beef shoe. So it's better for the environment and better for the animals. I had never been in a leather factory before. I went to work at Timberland, and it's really fascinating watching leather made. And on the left, it's a conveyor belt of leather that's just hanging in the ceilings of this factory. And there's thousands and thousands of hides that are getting circulated. And after they get processed, they hang them. It's almost like going to the dry cleaner, and it moves around. And it moves around the whole factory, and it's the drying process. And when it's curing, one of the other, this was before everybody was doing recycled polyester. Timberland wanted to figure out how they could make something with the recycled polyester. So we came up with a fabric called the rebottle fabric, and this was made from the plastic water bottles put into footwear. This is a beautiful day in Hong Kong. No fog, no smog. This is, I wonder if I can get the video to work.
What is that?
So that's not taffy. It's it's an EVA material, and that is them, after it's been mixed, they run it through and it will circle around and around until it gets the air out and it's the right consistency. And then it gets pressed into a mold and made into an outsole or a midsole. And that is going to be the green stride that is just launched now at Timberland, called Natural Comfort Platform. And it's made with the sugarcane. So just
Can I ask a question about that? Is
Sure.
that like available in different densities? Or is it just like
no,
purely
it's just, it was, this one was developed specifically for one density, and it's very similar to the Allbirds sugarcane midsole, but we made ours a little bit harder because we wanted to have it as a ground contact. So just a lot of working with the Asia factories, coming up with the specs that were needed. A lot of the outsoles from the compounds were a combination of rubber and EVA. And you can see the one on the right was one that had a lot of parts that needed to get molded together, different colors. This is a factory that was making the rubber lug sole for the yellow boot. And you can see up on the left is the natural rubber before it gets processed, gets put into little strips, then it goes into the manufacturing of it with the ovens, and they press it, and then it comes out looking just the way you need it to most of the time. The picture on the left is a combination of all the different materials that's going to go into making an outsole. That one, they'll just take it and put it into a mixer, and it ends up melting down together, and then it goes into what I call the taffy machine, and then it gets put into molds, and you've got your outsoles. So there's so many different parts that go into making a shoe. This is an interesting company called Lacte Havea, and they make natural rubber outsoles. And I had the opportunity to go and hand pour some outsoles for Timberland. On the left, it's the mixture from the natural rubber, and you pour it into these molds, and they're sitting in warm water, and then they get flipped out into the water after they're molded, and then they go into an oven, and it's cured, and it has minimal additives to it. So that was pretty fun. And then I was in a shoelace factory. It's really noisy. So the one on the left is a shoelace getting made, and the one on the right is a material for an upper, the mesh getting knitted. And then everything needs tags and labels, and there's some labels getting made. And so it's really interesting. You can see all the needles at the top. Each one of them has one thread pulled through to create the label. So if one thread is broken, then there's a defect in it. So there's a lot of attention that needs to be looked at when they're making textiles for footwear. So I got to have a little fun too while I was traveling. I always tried to go to the local markets, see what was going on, get inspiration from the local people. This was a shoe store in Vietnam that I went to, and they said, do you want a pair of boots? And I said, sure, what kind of boots are you going to make? And so I walked in and they put my foot on a piece of paper and they drew around my foot on a piece of paper. And that's how they measured my foot. And they made a pair of Chelsea boots for me. And they were ready the next day. I came back, I tried them on, I picked out the leather, the color, the soles, and they were $40. And I love my boots from Vietnam. It was really quite interesting to see. This is called Hot Shop. I don't know if anybody's heard of Hot Shop. Echo puts well, before COVID, they used to do a workshop once a year, and they would invite designers from around the world to their headquarters in the Netherlands. And you would spend 4 days working in the Echo tannery and coming up with latest, greatest, coolest ideas. And it was really fun to meet people from around the world. And it was accessory designers, it was footwear designers, it was apparel designers. And at the end of the workshop, you presented out what your new idea was. And it was sort of kind of like a marketing and innovation play for Echo. So on top of all the factory work, there was a lot of trade shows that I went to, Lineapel, Material Connection in New York City, Premiere Vision in Paris and New York, and then just drawing inspiration from places around the world, like beautiful desserts that turned into a textile design. And on the right-hand side are little rugs made from pom-poms, and that ended up turning into a color story. I'm at a persimmon factory here in Taiwan, and always enjoying the local food. So what I'm doing now is I call myself a Spahr Creative. I do some design consulting, color and trend forecasting, material innovation, education and teaching, community engagement, and some commission painting. So there's a 3S art space in Portsmouth where we do a project upcycle, and Goodwill donates all the clothing, and it's kind of like Project Runway, where you have a certain amount of time and you have to take the Goodwill apparel and turn it into a fashion piece, usually an evening gown. So I was a judge 2 years ago, and I do a lot of work with them with the sustainability portion of it. I do some lectures at schools, and I do color and trend development, and I do some commissioned artwork for fun. And that's me in a nutshell, a quick one. Do you have any questions?
That was great. Thanks. I don't have a question just yet, but
I have a big list of questions. Do we want to stop recording so we could just talk?
Sure.
Yeah.
Not sure how to do that. Maybe she shut it off. I think Katrina left. Can you shut it off from where you are, Allison?
Whoops.
Or was there a record button at the bottom?
I don't think I have.